Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Cascade Law Court Commission. It is July 2nd, 2024. This past the clock. We're going to start with the pledge of allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Lorraine,
Here.
Vice President Booth, here, Commissioner Nat,
Here.
Commissioner Peterson,
Here.
Commissioner Tweed, here.
All right, modifications, additions, and changes to the agenda, sir.
None.
Perfect. All right. Board Executive Director's Performance Evaluation 2023. Do we have Mark Jones?
Yes, Mark Knudsen worked really hard to get in front of us today. He's out sick, so he's going to do it over Zoom. But he also has Shanta Carter with him, who's going to help him because his voice is going out as well. So Tracy, he did a lot to be here tonight. I was like, we're going to cancel this, and he was like, no, I'm going to do it. So we have him with us today.
All right.
So I'm not sure who's
I will just quickly say hi. Thank you very much. I'm doing great, except I can't talk and I can't breathe. Other than that, I'm just fine. And so I really appreciate Shanta Carter has come in, filled in at the last minute, and will cover the material. And I'm standing by, available for questions.
Hi, everyone, and good evening. Can you hear me fine?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So the port had requested SDO assist the commission in completing Jeremiah Blue's performance evaluation for the 2023-24 evaluation period. At your June 18th commission meeting, SDO provided an overview of the recommended approach and a schedule for the commission to complete a Blue's evaluation of the 2023-2024 evaluation period. The materials that have been provided to you are for review and consideration. Is there any changes that you guys need made to these documentations?
I haven't had a chance to review all of them yet, so I apologize in advance.
I believe that it is information that you guys discussed as your recommended approach and schedule. I don't think that Mark's made very many changes to that. It's the evaluation process and timeline, your evaluation criteria for the period of June 1, 2023 to May 31, 2024, the performance goals for the period of June 2023 through May 2024, and the commission had established these appraisal goals in May of 2023. Evaluation worksheet and rating scale. SDO developed this proposed form for Blue to use while completing his self-evaluation and for the commissioners to use when completing their individual evaluations.
I will try to add that the evaluation criteria that were included are the criteria taken directly out of Jeremiah's existing employment agreement. And so one of the questions would logically be, well, do you even need to approve those because you previously established them as part of the employment agreement? And I simply want to encourage you to think in terms of looking at them, acknowledging them, making sure everybody has a common understanding of what those criteria are, because they will be used as the basis for the evaluation. In terms of the form, it basically just takes those evaluation criteria, puts them on a form, and suggests that you would use a standard school grading system A through F to establish the grades of how Jeremiah has done in each of those evaluation criteria areas. If this all makes sense, what would happen over the next week? Jeremiah would complete his self-evaluation, distribute that to everybody, and then the commissioners would have about 3 weeks to complete their evaluation. All of the commissioners would independently return their evaluation scores to me using the prescribed form. I'll compile the results, and then I will show up at the next commission meeting on August 8th. Is that what it is? Anyhow,
Yes.
your next commission meeting. And we'll review the results and confirm that that's the scores that you want to give Jeremiah.
Previously, and I maybe have discussed this with Mark, but definitely discussed it with Tommy, and don't see Tommy included on that coup in the final meeting, but having Tommy sit in, Tommy represents the board, right, and we work for you guys, so having him sit in on that meeting may be beneficial to you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Mark.
no, absolutely, yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, we could definitely review this, give our comments, feedback and ratings. And then on that August 6th meeting, is that when we start looking towards next year?
Yes,
Evaluation
so
for the next-
in the evaluation worksheet, if you look at the second page of the evaluation worksheet, it's page 11 of your board packet. You'll note the couple of accomplishments, but then each commissioner should identify some goals for the next review period. And so everybody will submit those goals to me. I'll compile a list, and that's what we'll discuss at the August 6th meeting.
Yeah, I don't actually need any sort of discussion. If you have any questions, for Tommy, any questions at all, it's great.
Yeah.
Or minutes to just review.
It seems like most of this is just evaluating over the last year, right? And then us just putting together our own thoughts for next year, or I guess now. Yeah, so that's fine.
Yep. So as I explained last time, it's a two-part process. It's the backward-looking part in terms of how Jeremiah did last year, and it's to begin the process of how you want to do looking forward next year. Again, this is also the opportunity, not today, but in August, if you want to refine the criteria, you have an opportunity to do that for the period going forward. We can't do that going backwards because that would be akin to sort of moving the goalpost at the end of the game. We really don't want to change the evaluation criteria that you had previously told Jeremiah you would use for that evaluation period.
So there is a proposed motion here, when anybody is ready, or
No action.
is there action on it?
Yeah. So yes, we do want the commission to basically approve using the material we've submitted.
Yep. I move to approve FTAO's proposal for completion of the board executive director's performance evaluation for the 2023-2024 evaluation period, including adoption of the evaluation process and timeline, evaluation criteria of the period of June 1st, 2023 through May 31st, 2024, and performance evaluation worksheet and rating scale.
I'll second that motion. We have a motion to second to approve the SDAO's proposal for the creation of the board executive director's performance evaluation. Any questions? I'll second. And a second, yes. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for your
Very
stellar
good.
work.
Thank you.
Thanks for pitching it for him.
Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon, Mark.
All right. Thank you very much. See ya.
All right. Discussions. For Economic Development Grant Program. 2024, 2025.
Thank you, President Lorraine, thank you, Commissioners. This will be discussion number 2, that we're going to be having in the formation of the Port Funded Grant Program. We got a lot of topics covered in our first discussion, but mainly the main walk away was that we still need to think about things a little bit more and how we want to set up the current parameters for our grant program. Based on that discussion, in your memos in your packet, I've made some staff recommendations. They're only recommendations, and I'm not married to them at all, so no hard feelings if you want to throw that all in the garbage bin and start over. But one of the things that I'm recommending is that we approach the grant program this year in 2 levels and establish a small grants program for awards under $5,000. Projects under this program would not need to demonstrate job creation per se, although they certainly could. But it wouldn't be a eligibility criteria or really a high priority scoring criteria on these applications. But all of the projects that you fund really do need to be tied to the port's goals for economic development. You do need to show a positive direct impact on the local economy, but not necessarily have to illustrate that with $5,000 they could create or retain a job. Then I'm recommending that you establish a large grants program for awards between $5,000 and $50,000. And that these projects should be able to reliably demonstrate direct or indirect job creation as a result of their project. So those are just sort of 2 ways of thinking about it. I think that the application processes would be much more abbreviated for the small grants program. Maybe something a lot easier to apply, probably not something that we would conduct interviews with applicants for. But as we get higher up in the dollar value of a grant award, really as the funder, the port is sort of assuming more and more responsibility for success. And so you want to have more and more information and proof of readiness for those projects. So that application might be more comprehensive. We might want to interview those candidates or not, or you might want to ask for some other proof of project readiness before you make the award. Also, those larger dollar amount grants probably would have a more robust reporting process. Maybe you wouldn't require that awardees of the small grants program come and attend a commission meeting and present at the end of the year, but you would certainly want to have a presentation from your awardees of the larger grants awards. So that's just one way to kind of think about it. Based on our discussion, I also wanted to recommend that on eligibility level only, maybe not priority, but eligibility, that the port consider applicants regardless of their tax status, and make the following types of projects fundable. Go ahead and make planning and program development, including studies and permitting costs, eligible costs, marketing and special events, production and promotion, capital construction, recreation and tourism infrastructure, amenities and services improvements, emergency response, hazard mitigation and resilience planning projects could be eligible. And then the next page in the memo has 4 questions that are really the issues that I need more of your discussion on before I can make a staff recommendation. So should we stop there maybe and just talk about that first set of recommendations, and then we can dive into the.
When you say regardless of their tax status, I'm assuming you mean whether they are tax exempt or not, like 501c3.
Yeah.
Not as to whether they paid their tax.
Right, and so whether or not they are a nonprofit, 501c3 or 501c6 entity, or a for-profit business would still be eligible, and even a government entity.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant.
Do you know what the extra paperwork is for a regular business that is not special tax exempt versus working with someone who is tax exempt? How much easier or how much more difficult is it for the port to process that?
You mean like the application
In
side?
terms of accounting, budgeting, for the audit and stuff?
I think they'd be similar for the smaller grants. If you wanted to restrict it by tax status, then there would be more paperwork. But if you don't want to restrict it, then really we just need their tax information, but no other additional paperwork, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think we need articles of incorporation. Maybe you would if you wanted for like a larger grant, just to, you know.
Yeah, I was just concerned if the $150,000 we have conditions tied to it, to specific organizations, or it's all just doesn't really matter what the tax status is.
Well, it's completely up to you. My recommendation is that you go ahead and make funding applications allowed regardless of tax status and not restricted to a specific tax status.
And then how it lines up with our strategic business plan priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Also the renewal option, multi-year process,
Yeah.
you'd rather see that happen in the large category grants versus the small one?
You know, I don't have a recommendation on that. I feel like you guys still need to talk about that amongst yourselves a little bit more. I don't have enough information from your feelings on that to really be able to make a recommendation on the multi-year funding. One thing I am sort of hoping to lead you towards is that if you do decide to go ahead and fund general operating costs, administrative costs, those sorts of things, that you can talk amongst yourself and consider maybe tying that to a specific project that has a start and an end date. So for example, an entity could say, we want to do this project and eligible costs include the salary of the executive director or the salary of you know, 1 through 5 staff member, right? And that'd be part of the project budget in their application, and go ahead and make that an eligible expense. But maybe you wouldn't want to say, we're just going to pay our salary for all of our staff members this year, and we'll see you next year too. You might want to tie it to a specific deliverable that goes back to those economic development goals of the port.
I like that. I think especially if it's gonna be a continual grant year after year, there should be some specifics about it, so we know exactly kind of like what the impact is directly. And maybe twice a year submit reports about the progress of how much has been spent, what do you have in budget. Because I think once a year checking on that is not enough. Just want to make sure that the project's in progress.
Yeah.
Measurable, it's good.
Most of the grants that we get as applicants have at minimum a quarterly reporting requirement. And again, you might not want to require that for the small grants, you know, you can spend $5,000, you know, in 1 quarter pretty easily. So it might be silly to require them to report on that, you know, every 3 months, but those larger grants, if you want to do, you know, kind of help people through, make sure you're tracking projects.
And key performance indicators, KPIs for.
Once again, I think it's, in general, is good to have measurable success, because even if you give somebody a $5,000 grant and say, I'm gonna do this with it, and they say, well, we intended to, but
We did this
you know,
instead, right?
didn't get to it before the money was spent, then obviously if they're coming back for another grant next year, then you kind of look at that and say, okay, well,
What happened? Yeah.
what happened to the money we gave you last time? Did you do what you said you were going to do with the money? So measurable performance is I think definitely on, especially people who are gonna come to us multiple times, if they have something specifically that they want to achieve, then it's like, okay, how do you do?
You're making me think also of one thing that we talked a little bit about at the last meeting was also being cautious and trying to manage the port's overhead in managing these grant agreements. And we talked about that a little bit in the last meeting related to whether or not these grants would be award first, report later, or would they be reimbursement grants? For the small grants, I'd recommend it would be reward first and report later, because it's relatively, you know, low risk, low injury from somebody defaulting on their grant. Whereas we wouldn't really want at that level to task Melissa with checking the invoices of a grant applicant before we issue a check and, vice versa. The larger grants, maybe you do want to do that, it's where is your comfort level on the risk there and how much monitoring do we want to do balanced with the staffing workload of that monitoring, right? So we want to keep that as low as we can while still being responsible. So quarterly reports might be a good way to do that versus,
So I feel for the small grants, for example, maybe a food cart approaches the port and they want to start up a food cart and they have no history in the restaurant business and they're asking for, $5,000 or $10,000. Obviously, that's probably only gonna generate like 1 to 3 jobs at most. But it does provide another dining option in town, maybe in an area where it takes 10, 15 minutes to drive to, on the east side, but I think there needs to be a little bit more requirements in that type of grant for something that's not proven, to kind of keep that accountable too.
Yeah, and we could do that in the scoring criteria. You can make a certain number of points, for example, based on the experience of the applicant and their resume in the work that they're gonna be doing. So if somebody who's run a food cart business before, has been successful, proven track record, knows they can do it, only needs $5,000 to really make it happen, they would maybe score full points in that criteria. Whereas somebody first starting out maybe has a lower amount of points on the experience level, but the plan still looks good, and so you could score, so we can handle that kind of in the scoring.
Yeah, that's great, because I'm not too familiar with how grants are put into criteria.
Yeah.
And you come from previous organizations where you have to go through the grants and stuff, so you can share a little bit more about.
Yeah, it's, and what we really wanna think about is in two sort of boxes. The first box is the eligibility box. And on our side, that's our way of really controlling, controlling the applications you're gonna get before you even get them. Is telling them, this is what we will consider from these types of entities, basic eligibility. And as that goes through in the process, that's a staff level review. It's very cut and dry. We'll be able to say, I'm sorry, your project's not eligible. It doesn't meet the eligibility criteria and it doesn't need to get all the way, to a scoring process because it's simply not eligible. But then you also, in the second box, you're setting up your preferences and your priorities. And those are really translated in the call. We're kind of coaching our applicants to show us what we want to see. These are the kinds of projects we want to see. And you're really helping them strategize their grant application and ensuring that you're going to get the projects you want to see. And that trickles down into basically a scoring sheet for a scoring team that says, we want to give so many points to these applications based on these criteria and project readiness, team experience, jobs created or retained, other sorts of criteria like, pick a goal out of your strategic business plan and say, you get so many points if you do X, Y, and Z. One of the things that I wrote about in my memo, in point number 2 there is the way that maybe it's not the right way to think about it, but I think it is, since it's so tied to the beginning of your strategic business plan, which is a 5-year plan. I feel like every year the commission, maybe during the budget planning process or right before, should talk about, okay, what are our priorities for this year? And year 1 will be different from year 2, 3, 4, and 5. And in year 1, I'm recommending that you include as a preference applications that would help stand up future project partners. Because we're gonna need them in year 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if we can help them in year 1, and maybe in year 2, that's not the priority anymore. You don't want to fund a startup, or you don't want to fund something new. But in year 1, it's okay to start, fund something new, something that will get maybe, just a new partner, a new business, a new nonprofit, a new service to our community that hasn't had a chance to be stood up just yet, but with this funding could. And then in year 2, we have a partner in other ways that we can work. So that's, again, just a recommendation. It tied to the timing of the plan. But you could also say, for example, this year is all about recreation. We want to see projects that make Cascade Locks better for the visitors. And maybe another year you say, we're all about energy, efficiency or emergency, you guys set those priorities every year. Or a mix of them, yeah.
I love everything that you said, and I think one concern that I wanted to mention to Rob that he mentioned, like if somebody came with a startup, if we require a business plan or, whatever their operations plan, it gives us something to look at and say, okay, this actually looks like it could work. At least they're thinking about that, so there are other.
Yeah.
So I've been putting a lot of thought towards this over the last couple of weeks. I wrote down a lot of notes, so I'm gonna request it. Not get interrupted, but like if you have thoughts on what I'm saying, like let's write them down and we'll talk about it in discussion. Because I touched on a lot of the things that you had mentioned during this. But I think at the very start, when I just started thinking about the opportunity that we have, right? Just having the grant fund in general. I think it's a very unique opportunity that we have to enhance our entire community. We're supplying the citizens with the resources and the opportunity to change their lives, our district, and the community at large. And this can have positive impacts for not only years, but for decades to come. So I'm coming from that space, right? I think for at least this very first year, knowing that we have never done something like this, I don't want to pigeonhole us into one particular sector of tourism and recreation. I definitely think everything should be around the strategic business plan, but I think there should be 3 primary sectors, either tourism and recreation as 1, downtown revitalization is 2, and this could be split up into 3 or 4, but government or nonprofit. And have those, and basically that would be the 3rd sector, or we can break that up into 2 different sectors. I agree with the types of projects eligible for funding, because there's a lot of just different costs, whether you're a new business or an established business. To that, I think that this should be open to new businesses and established businesses. New business fund options are extremely limited. Most banks ask, and I said this last time, most banks ask for a year of revenue before even offering loans. And so if you want to start a bookstore, or if you want to start a small restaurant, a new oven is not cheap, and it's definitely a requirement for commercial locations. And just permitting a loan with OLCC and with health department is already in the thousands of dollars. So it's going to take a lot for anyone to just get started. So because of that, I think I agree with you as well. I think that there should be 2 levels. If it's a brand new business, I think we should actually limit funds up to $10,000 based on, and this is the criteria that I wrote down, totally open to further discussions here. Business plan, absolutely, they need to share a business plan. We need to know what they're going to be doing. I would like to see a match of at least $20,000, whether that's in labor or funding on their own side. It needs to fall within one of those
20, I'm sorry, did you mean 20%?
20%, yeah,
Okay.
sorry. It needs to fall within one of the sectors previously mentioned, downtown revitalization, government, nonprofit, or tourism rec. It has to align with our strategic business plan. I think from a funding standpoint, for small businesses, we could do 50% immediate and 50% midpoint. I don't know about fully funding at the very beginning, because sometimes things change and whatnot. And then they must be actively ready. We can't just have like a straight up idea, like I have an idea, blah, 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 blah. Like it doesn't, I don't know about shovel ready, but we need to have, they need to show movement and business plan. Yeah, they need to have some of that. Like I said, likely we need more criteria there. If it's an established business, I would like to limit funds up to $50,000 based on a lot of criteria as well. Business plan or an interview. If these are established businesses, then they likely have a very specific thing that they're going to need these dollars for. So some sort of interview, some sort of proof of what they want to do.
Did you say 15 or 50?
15, not 0. growth and employment opportunity. Either it's a big giant, either it's an established company and they need to buy a big piece of equipment. And that equipment is gonna show their growth as a business, or they're gonna employ more people. So one of those two criteria needs to be, and those opportunities need to be met in order for this to happen. They also need to have a match of saying, we can discuss 20%, 30%, whatever it happens to be, but it has to be labor funding as well. Also should fall within one of the sectors, and it also should align with our strategic business plan. Same thing, funding is being granted, and we likely need more criteria there. And I'm almost done, I promise. If it is a business, nonprofit government, I'm open from the eligibility standpoint regardless of tax status. But if they want to do multi-years in a row, they have to show some sort of tangible growth or employment via revenue or tax documentation. They need to do reporting on a quarterly basis to us. And then must show how the previous plans generated a positive impact to the community. Again, we're in a very, very unique position where we can actually use this as an opportunity to grow our community. And so they need to show how it helps the community. And then I think that we should also reserve the right to the amount that we want. Just because we say up to $10,000 or whatever, doesn't mean that we're going to give everyone $10,000. So those are my immediate thoughts and things I've been tackling in my head for last couple of weeks.
Pretty good for an immediate thought, right?
So those are things that I've been kind of like juggling around in my head the last couple of weeks. So whenever I saw this, I was like, yeah, this aligns. So
Perfect.
cool.
Other question.
Yeah.
Talk to me more about growth as a necessity. What if it's just a small little art,
Right.
something that somebody wants to put up and
Right.
they don't have any. Just tell me more about the
The
growth.
growth in this particular scenario, the growth would be tied to larger established companies. So if you are going to be, say, like an art studio, or let's just say like a bakery, right? It's just something small, right? If you're established and you're asking, and you're gonna be asking for $50,000, either growth or employment, are you gonna hire someone? Or are you gonna actually expand? Or are you gonna move your operation to be bigger? Or are you going to be buying a brand new piece of equipment so that you can actually start funding like to-go orders or anything like that?
I think I misunderstood at first. So like if you're saying, this is just an example.
Right.
If Thunder Island wanted to come in for a grant
Okay.
because they're established, then it would be growth or
Yeah. And the new, my definition of new was an actual brand new startup, I would say within the first 1-2 years, but again, that's like open to discussion.
That's great.
Back on the eligibility box, some things that should be a bare minimum. It can't be a person, it has to be a registered business in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
Also the question of, do we want to allow Washington in since it's close proximity to the bridge?
I think we have to restrict our spending within the port district.
Usually grants are restricted by state, so I would say keep it only to Cascade Locks.
Well, it would be the
Port It would be the port issue within our port district. Because
Yeah, and then also the other thing is, along with business registration, sole provider, have their insurance, have their health licenses, whatever the nature of the business is.
Right, that would be part of the business plan.
The other thing is, regarding Albert's talk about expansion and measuring that. There needs to be a mechanism to prevent them from expanding away from Cascade Locks. To make sure the expansion happens in our town, and we're not just stepping stone to go like Hood River or Portland.
Okay.
So there needs to be some sort of accountability for that, and then also,
That's
the other thing is
That's great.
conflicts of interest. Port staff, it's a small town, obviously, if you're running sales issues, can port staff participate? Can commissioners, obviously, they shouldn't participate if they're voting on it. And then can they approach the port to waive things, like, for example, an event business that comes to Port of Cascade Locks runs an event, And can they actually, are they eligible to ask for waiving of parking and all these other things that, you know, we can sometimes negotiate?
Yeah, we talked about that, it's kind of a known need and for me personally, what I'd like to get everybody to a point of. If somebody's presenting or producing an event, that they would normally pay an event fee for it. I would like for them to include that event fee in the budget for the project. If they're awarded that grant, they use that grant money to pay their event fee. And the reason is, it just records in financial transaction, the board's waiving of fees, which I think should be a more formal process than like, oh yeah, you're a good guy, so we're not gonna charge you for your event, but we are gonna charge these guys their
There has
event.
to be
I'd like to formalize it in,
Yeah,
you
very
know,
formal,
yeah,
upfront, so there's no discrimination.
right?
For bias. Another thing is, can they actually use the money for overhead things like lease, like renting a space, and what if that space is in
Yeah,
port property too?
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
those are all Tommy questions.
So-
Yes.
Question in regards to, as you said, eligibility of persons who may be associated with the port. Now, if they are part of a nonprofit, which then, you know, because part of the criteria for something being, a conflict of interest is that it presents a profit or benefit to the person. If the business is a nonprofit business, then I might argue that that eligibility thing might not apply necessarily because they are not benefited from it financially because it is a nonprofit. But I don't, and I just, I don't worry about that, and if it is a nonprofit that has multiple partners.
$50 a year.
I'm just, I would kind of agree with that, only
And
really,
I-
just,
Almost kind of a legal question, is that? Would that still?
Yeah, so from the conflict of interest standpoint, when you're talking about using, you know, your decision making here. You actually look at if you are conferring a benefit or avoiding a detriment to a person or a business that they're related, associated with. So it's a little bit broader than just the individual. But there are exceptions to that for 501(c)(3)s, for example. That's not a business that you're related with. It falls out of the definition. So it's nuanced, and there's some protections there, and there's some openings there.
And that was kind of my question, is that something that is very clear cut or something that's more like?
I think it's clear cut. It's just a matter of how you fold it into your policy.
Okay.
and I wanna
I
say,
mean, I don't have a nonprofit, so it doesn't really affect me, but just a point of curiosity.
well, yeah, and it kind of ties into, like, I think that there's been a lot of good ideas here, but, having those limitations kind of restricts one recipient I have in mind being on the board, maybe conflict of interest, I don't know, but museum, we've been funding and supplying them, and we plan on doing that out of our thing, and if we're limiting it to $10,000, it could severely impact the museum's
But
operations.
you're a volunteer on the board, not a.
Right,
Correct.
I am, correct, I'm not getting paid or anything, there's no conflict there, I'm
Right.
just trying to argue for them that some of these restrictions could be severely limiting to what we've been doing, and yes, it is an issue that we need to probably discuss in more detail on how we how the museum stays afloat in the future, and if it's gonna be through this grant program or not, and that's a broader and deeper discussion that needs to happen.
But they're also established, so they wouldn't be limited to the $10,000 specifically.
Yeah, I think you guys are talking about two different things, and I wanted to talk about the one conflict of interest. If you serve on a committee that is an applicant organization, we wouldn't want to make that in the eligibility criteria, like
Right.
nobody who has a port commissioner on their board is eligible to apply. But we
Right.
would need Tommy's help on how we could go through the formal action to approve or deny an application. It may be, I need to declare my potential conflict of interest because I serve on this board. It may be, I need to abstain from this vote, you know.
I just wanna make sure that when we're talking about ways we limit applicants and stuff like that, that it's not gonna like severely restrict things that we've been doing
Right.
Right.
in the past to help keep things afloat.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I have a question for Rob.
Yeah.
You were, maybe I missed it, because I almost interrupted you, and I'm sorry, expanding to another city.
Yes.
Talk more about that.
There's a scenario, for example, maybe, we go down with the example of a food cart. The food cart, after a year or two, gets popular, and now they approach multi-year grant and they want to open a food cart in Hood River. They can't, obviously, this type of grant program wouldn't be for something like that. They would need to approach funders in Hood River about that. So like,
Oh,
concern is to keep the expansion impact within Cascade Lodge.
Impact, that's,
And not to have them expand outside of the area.
Yeah.
Well, I guess another question somewhat related to that, might be a situation where the person actually lives in Washington, but they're building their business
Here.
in Cascade Locks, but would their being a resident of Washington outside of our port district then make them ineligible, even though they're building a business?
I think
within
this is
Cascade Locks?
registered in Oregon. That's consent.
Yeah, the restriction would need to be in a district, because that gives me a question specifically your event, comment. Someone comes in for an event and they ask for money, but they're not established here, and we just give them money and then they have their event, make their money in jet. That's not,
Yeah, it would be ideal. Like, it's not serving the community other than them making a profit off the event. It needs to be something that directly impacts the community. We need to create those goals and priorities, like what we want to see,
so it's almost like they need to have an established business within the district and almost like residency.
A community event, for example, like swimming lessons or something like that, we'd fund that. We
Right.
team up with the PTO to, give first aid CPR classes or, something that impacts the community in some way that's not a complete for-profit.
Right.
So the city of Cascade Locks does not require business registration, does not require business license, so they would have to obtain a business license.
Depends on the type of business. In food, you have to get a health inspection and all that stuff, and your OLCC if you serve alcohol. There might be some exclusions. We won't support gambling activities for businesses, but nonprofits are okay because they're excluded for gambling fundraiser type stuff.
And, we could require, in Oregon, the proof of your registration with the corporate division is a certificate of existence. We could require that or some other notification that you're in good standing with the state.
Yeah.
For downtown revitalization, I would imagine there's going to be some people asking for money towards new signage in downtown or something.
Absolutely.
So we want to think about, how do we, set it up in a way where all these grants aren't just people asking for new signs in town, then we end up paying for new signs in town as a whole. We want to see some diversity in the impact. So that's why I like Albert's idea of limiting the grants into, 3 categories. Government, nonprofit, downtown, and then tourism recreation.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good structured approach.
I can give you a little bit of a preview based on the letters of interest that we've received so far. From folks who are gearing up and ready to submit an application. As Carrie said, the museum is planning on submitting an application for funding for operating expenses. Also, the Hood River Energy Council, of course, is also going to submit also for staffing costs. Received a letter of interest this week from Landmass Wines. They will be applying for $5,000 for a website upgrade for their business. Northwest Trail Alliance is, as you heard from them, they're looking for about $14,000 for improvements to Easy Climb. Cascade Locks Fire and EMS would be applying, they need to raise $24,000 for a fire engine. Upgrades to a fire engine, and Hood River County Sheriff's Office right now is doing a fundraiser for a safety boat, and they need to raise about $32,000. Is there anybody else that I'm forgetting that we've heard from? So that's just a sampling of what we know could be coming, to give you kind of a sense of the
That's
landscape.
without really advertising it or talking about it, except that it needs to be.
Oh, and also a downtown business is planning on submitting an application for improvements to their building. Yes.
For example, the sheriff department and the fire department have a mutual agreement that there needs to be some sort of water safety rescue craft in Cascade Lock stationed here. Instead of waiting for a call for somebody to trailer something out, so that's something, I would really like to see, yeah.
And ultimately, what we'd like to see is there being a committee that works on this, that's built of 2 commissioners and 3 residents, right? For the transparency piece of it, and really by the time it gets to this board, you're just, I mean, obviously, you're always welcome to vote however you want to vote, but if you're taking the work that committee has put in very seriously in their recommendations as being very serious, right? Otherwise, we wind up getting it here and we're tearing it apart. By the time it gets to you guys, it should be pretty well baked. If it hit the criteria, it's gone through that group, they say this is who we should go with, sweet, let's get it done.
Right.
That transparency piece is what's really gonna be helpful for this commission. And some of what we've missed with previous giving money to organization.
The last question I have is, what if someone applies as an infrastructure improvement project, like say they're a contractor that knows how to develop a waterfront, and they come and they're like, hey, we'd love to see, you know, for example, Herman Creek be a little bit more developed, where it's more ADA accessible, have some ramps, and then they apply for a grant. Is there a restriction for the port to get money from that instead of just building it themselves? Because there's a liability of a permanent structure being on port property that you actually own.
Yeah, that would be more of a more of a sport driven project. If it's on our own property, that'd be a sport driven project.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wouldn't see us giving too many grants to infrastructure improvements within our.
The helpfulness for a grant like that to come up is like, hey, that's a great idea, you know, but development and capital improvements on port-owned property would come not from the grant fund, it would come from the port development fund and be driven by us with our.
This is really about taking the broad term of economic development and giving it to the community and giving them an opportunity to see what they can get accomplished.
Right.
And taking some of that off of this board. You guys have 5 very specific things you want to accomplish in your strategic business plan, and that's gonna be your focus.
Right.
And without a doubt, you're gonna be in the community and people are gonna be like, I have this great idea. And now you have the opportunity to say, perfect, you should apply for a grant with that. Instead of trying to bring it in here and trying to figure out how to get it into that strategic business plan and then convince other commissioners, and now they're presenting and all these sorts of things, like, it's a good idea. And it's going to be done, great, we can get other organizations doing some of the smaller projects and some of that heavy lifting that keeps us focused. That's the win.
And then it just to add on to that real quickly, it acknowledges that everybody in Cascade Locks has a role to play in economic development.
Right.
It's not just the port, it's not only the port that does economic development, there's private business, nonprofits, government entities, all can do things that, you know, sort of fertile ground for growth all over the place. And the more partners that we have in economic development, the quicker things will get done.
Exactly.
And the stronger that our partners are, the better the work will be, so.
And that's kind of how I see it, is like we're. Like I said at the very beginning, we're allowing for the resources for people to do it instead of us. They're the ones with the vision, they're the ones with the drive, they're the ones with the ideas. If we can help them create those and it in turn benefits the community, that's what I like about this. And to that, and I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, Rob, with the construction company with your question about, you know, ports and stuff. Infrastructure. Should we have a top yearly revenue limit for people that can get funds? Because we don't want Google coming in and being like, oh, hey, we need $50,000 to do this.
Yeah, part of the criteria would be.
Yeah, because they don't need that money.
Like, how much do they need, you know?
Well,
if we can
you
touch
guys are
that.
both driving to a really important thing that I think you guys all need to talk amongst yourself.
Yeah.
And it's you kind of setting yourself, you're setting a culture for funding. Some funders, some grant makers, they want to see that you don't need their money. Because they are averse to you being dependent on them year after year. And, you know, the last thing those funders want to do is give you money, build something up great, and then when the money's gone, it all crashes down, right? So that's one approach. Other funders, they want to see that this project wouldn't happen without them. You know, those are 2 extremes. And so it's important for you guys to kind of figure out where do you settle on that spectrum? You know, what is your tolerance for, you know, how high will you score, will you set a scoring criteria for a plan for self-sufficiency in the future? Where if you give me $5,000 this year, you're never gonna see me again, because that is the pivot point to get to this point in my business where I won't need funding. Do you wanna be that kind of funder? You know, and that's sort of the, do you wanna be the first dollar in or the last dollar in? Or, you know, a mix of both. One other way to, score that when it comes down to, you know, brass tacks on a specific application is all of the supporting materials can inform you on that. How many letters of support do they have from their neighbors and from their partners in business and other entities? Do they have letters of support where they have already been, it's not an idea that I had in the shower this morning and I whipped up a grant application.
Right.
I've been talking about this to people, I've got buy-in, maybe I have other grant funding already received, and this is some money that could provide a match to a larger grant. Those sorts of projects show that they do have a pathway to self-sustainability. But like you say, Albert, that startup money is really hard to get, and sometimes there is that project where the first dollar in is the most meaningful one.
Right.
And maybe you want to organize those sorts of applications, maybe by a small grant, large grant, or maybe you'll look at a large grant that's a startup based on a project that you really have to show, you know, a solid business plan and, you know.
One last thing I want to mention is kind of based on the community needs right now. So Albert suggested tourism, recreation, downtown revitalization, and government nonprofit as kind of grant categories, so we have diversification. I think there needs to be another part of that is like social impact or social services. For example, daycare service is a huge problem. If you look at Stevenson, they have that newer Playworks thing, and it makes Stevenson a lot more family friendly.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that here if you have two working parents.
Yeah.
So I can totally see it. So
It's a great point. I was kind of struggling with that government nonprofit, because I was kind of just. Definitely, we need something for nonprofits, like, that encompasses that. But then I also started thinking about, like, we know McKed will come, Energy Council will come to us, so where does that fit? And then where do these things?
daycare is a for-profit model, whereas nonprofit is more community focused.
So then maybe the umbrella, like, term is just something different. I don't want it to be a catch-all, because then what's the point, right?
Right.
Um,
But, you know, there is some wordsmithing that can happen there. I mean, you know, you can, on the larger grant applications, you can have them demonstrate job creation or retention, which is more of a numbers question. But then another way to approach that is explain to us how you're going to improve the quality of life or meet basic human needs for the residents of Cascade Locks.
right,
And then that's an essay answer to them, because it's gonna be subjective, you know, mix of objective and subjective. But a good project, you know, not just a good grant writer, but a good project will always say, hey, you know, like Rob said, we're gonna teach every kid in Cascade Locks how to do the Heimlich, or how, you know, how to do CPR. That's pretty great benefit to, you know, future generations of Cascade Locks residents.
And
you
that's
know?
something that can directly benefit our firefighter volunteers. They don't make any
Yeah.
money, but they can make some money on the classes, you know, and that, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're, by making, you know, those four categories, tourism, recreation, downtown revitalization, government nonprofit,
I would
slash
say
social services,
Yeah.
you know.
possibly government nonprofit. I don't think it necessarily has to be a government nonprofit. There's a lot of great nonprofit for fledgling nonprofit organizations that have do a lot of.
oh, there's a slash, not like a dash.
Yeah. Yeah,
No, slash, nonprofit.
Fledgling nonprofit, okay, got
so
it.
those entities are all eligible to apply, and then once you get a batch of them applications from, you know, they've made it through the eligibility hoop, and now we're on to the scoring hoops, right?
Right.
You know, that job creation, retention, and, you know, demonstrating that you're gonna improve the quality of life of residents of Cascade Locks in what way. Yeah, safety boat certainly will be able to demonstrate that, fire engine certainly will be able to demonstrate that. The museum, let's say they have a 12-month program, in the schools, right? That also funds some of their staffing costs, that hits all the points, and that's just an example. Once you get your first batch of applicants based on your eligibility criteria, then the scoring criteria does sort of,
Yeah.
So we already have, as we discussed at the last meeting, we already have $110,000 of our $260,000 fund dedicated to the city's energy upgrade project. So that leaves you with $150,000 to work with. If you're okay with splitting it, 0 to 5,000 and 5,000 to 50, or I'm totally fine if you want to shift that a little bit, make it 0 to 10 and 10 to 50 or 10 to 150, I don't know where you want to set that top limit. All you're doing is helping your applicants by setting those parameters, because it's that way they're not wasting their time asking for way too much money because we didn't tell them, oh, we don't want to do anything over 50.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I think, like I said, just knowing how much permitting is for brand new businesses, that's why I said up to 10 for
Okay.
new, and then that's why I personally
Okay.
said up to 50 but again, like, we have to there's only so much, right? We can't just
Yeah.
give everybody
Right.
50, right?
Right.
Then there's only 3 that we can hand out.
Yeah,
So-
if you made $10,000 awards, you're done.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
that's your fund. Spent, so.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before, there is the risk of if somebody applies for 50 because they really need 50 and you say, well, we can't give them 50, but we'll give them 10. It could mean they won't have enough money to do anything, their project is a $50,000 project and you give them 10, they can't come up with the other 40, then it's,
And I'd recommend against counter offers to a grant application. If somebody applies for 50 and you don't want to award 50, even if you want to award 10, in my mind, in that year, that's enough.
Yeah.
Come back next year, and here's your feedback, maybe try a lower amount next year. It gets a little bit sticky, especially with competing applications. If you're saying you asked for 50, your plan was to get 50 from us, but we're only gonna give you 10 now, figure it out, it can get pretty messy.
yes.
I think just kind of overview of what we're doing is helping the city a lot, right? Last week, we watched the last city council meeting, they just announced that their community fund's going away. Where they normally have $5,000 or $10,000 a year, and they're not having it in the budget this year due to challenges. So I feel this is a great opportunity to kind of fill in that gap, but at some point down the road, I'd like to approach the city together and make a collaborative program where we both are making impacts and not just taking on that responsibility.
Yeah. That would, that 50 that I said, I might walk that back. I recently, yeah.
Okay.
I walked that back and be lower.
Okay,
I'm thinking about some personal discussion I had and something else.
okay.
That's good. It's good for us. It's good for us to have this discussion, especially good for us to have this discussion in front of Tommy and watch us put this program together because we're gonna want to get it right. Nobody's gonna have all the right answers here, but we're certainly going to work on putting something together to bring you guys back motions to take actions on. And it's gonna be a few more of these most likely, but we'll get it right.
I think,
It doesn't have to get right tonight.
I think, first of all, everybody's got fantastic input. I love how much everybody's thought through the process. I think having those parameters is very beneficial to the applicants because it's like I was talking about our previous fire chief who researched all the previous grants that had ever been
Yeah.
awarded. And he knew that if he asked for more of that, you ask for the moon and you get nothing.
Yeah.
So he
And
said,
that's
okay,
standard
well,
practice.
yeah, 235,000 is the most anybody'd ever been awarded, even on a $400,000 thing.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, well, we'll go up to the line.
Yeah.
But if we're putting in the parameters, we're really doing everybody a favor
Absolutely.
because they know that if if they ask for the moon that's beyond the parameters, we're gonna check that one out there. So.
And ring writers do,
I applaud
look at that
everybody
historical
for,
lore.
process.
Try to find a sweet spot, you know.
I'm taking questions from online by chance. I just see them.
We don't have a public comment section tonight.
That's great discussion and it gives me a lot to work with, so I'll be able to come back with a new set of staff recommendations for you at the next meeting, and then maybe we might move forward into committee formation and talk about next steps. So thank you.
I will say this because we aren't taking public comments tonight, but please feel free to contact me or send me an email, pick up the phone. I'll make sure your comments make it into the commission meeting next time, and we may have a public comment at the next meeting.
And we are still welcoming letters of interest from anybody who wants us to give us a heads up. This is what we're thinking. Please do send those in. And those are not official applications, but they just help us in our planning efforts, knowing what's coming forward.
All right. Next up, we have executive session under ORS 192.6602F to consider information that are exempt by law from public inspection, and ORS 192.6602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions, and ORS 192.6602P to consider matters relating to cybersecurity infrastructure and responses to cybersecurity threats. All right, and we will have a short recess while we prepare, and I have another bit of something I need to read here. Okay, thank you very much. Board of Cascade Locks will now meet in executive session pursuant to what I just said, 192.6602F, which allows the commission to meet in executive session to consider information records that are exempt by law from public inspection, 192.6602E, which allows the commission to meet in executive session and to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions, 192.6602P, which allows the commission to consider matters relating to cyber security infrastructure and responses in cybersecurity threats. Representatives of the news media and designated staff, just a minute, I gotta move this up. How do we do that? Oh, there we go. Okay. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session hall. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. We will now take a short recess while we let everybody leave.
I'm going to ask Parker and Melissa to step up for this. You guys can be the two directors. I'll be back. Great. Okay. You'll have to send it out. We're back and get you on the run. I think this is.
and we're actively working on it and trying to track down where it's at. The first round of bark dust was ordered over the weekend or over the week, and it's been placed throughout the park. We'll have one more round of bark dust and some remaining flower beds that have yet to be cleaned. Mowing efforts continued in the business park before the heat picks up. The disc golf course has been mowed, and all of our main areas that we keep up on mowing have been mowed. We had an active midweek in the campground. We were at around 80% capacity for the last couple of weeks, even midweek. So thank you, Laurel, for that. We also met with Laurel and discussed some of the camp host duties and general campground updates for the upcoming busy season. And we've been super impressed with her. She's been doing a great job. The museum visitor center remodel is coming along nicely. If you guys get a chance, swing in there and have a look. It's going really well. We had a showing in Flex 6. I worked briefly on the maintenance assistant grant with Genevieve. We resolved the minor GFCI outlet issue in the campground, and then today we had Site 5 breaker replaced, and that was done by Jones Boys Electrical. They've been doing a great job for us lately. We installed air conditioners throughout the park. Busy weekend for Bridge of Gods this last weekend due to the Port Hood River Bridge incident. Our team did awesome. I want to say thank you to everybody on the Bridge of Gods team. You guys all did wonderful. It was just awesome how smooth things went for what it could have been. We prepared this week for the 4th of July. That's going really well. We'll wrap up tomorrow and getting fences, things like that to encourage folks to park where they want to park, and some park rule signs that'll be up. The sewer lift station update, we received back a quote from Early Engineering for the pump out station casing. We are actively working on a work plan forward to move forward with that. I'll tie this into the Ixtapa update. I had a call today with Juan from Ixtapa and let him know what was happening with the update. Alfonso helped me with that call. And he has expressed that whatever we want to do for that we think is best for that area, he will work with us. And then the stop update, they are waiting on a hood for the front dishwasher. This was an unexpected cost for them. And it's coming closer. I think it's on the way. It should have been here in the last couple of days. It's a couple of days behind. They're still actively working on the Excel update. That's what I got. Thank you.
And I'll do my report, and also wanted to talk through Janetta's report on events and let you know what's coming up in July. Today, of course, the Red Cross was in the pavilion doing a blood drive. We have 10 weddings in the Marina Park this month. CGRA wing clinics and the regatta is for happening. Gorge Canoe Club's kids camp. The Gorge has a meeting in House 3. There's yoga and beer on Thunder Island event coming on, and of course, like Parker said, the preparations for the 4th of July. And another shout out to Janetta and Todd and Captain Tom and Parker and John and Alfonso and Langdon for all that it's crazy how much work is going into making the Marine Park so beautiful and usable for the 4th of July. It's going to be really, really cool. Janetta will be presenting to you probably early the first meeting in September, her annual report for activity on the waterfront. I just didn't want to drag her into a commission meeting when she was getting ready for 10 very late nights already in July for the weddings. I'll give you a couple of heads up on a couple of high points on my section in the admin update, most of them related to some grants. Wanted to let you know that the pro team has started work on the second 3-mile section of our new trail. This is Ptarmigan Trails contract, and C2 Recreation is the project manager for that. There's the second section has a lot of rock. There's a lot of harder sculpting that has to happen and a lot of more technical work. But they're keeping me CC'd on all of their sort of coordinating emails and check-ins with each other. And it just looks like the Forest Service crew and our pro crew are just working together really, really well. And the work is unfolding very quickly, but cautiously. They're calling our project manager to the site repeatedly, check to make sure before we move forward that this is what you wanted. And so it seems like communication is really, really good, and the trail's gonna be awesome.
Chris has already written it, I just wanna.
Oh, yeah?
He loves it, he
Awesome.
goes and checks like the progress every few days,
Nice.
and he's like, it's amazing.
That's great, that's awesome to know. Wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to this year's sponsors for the fireworks show, including the Best Western Plus, Columbia River Inn, Free Family Brewers, Jetty Light, P Square Solutions, the City of Cascade Locks Tourism Committee, A1 Septic and Beam Excavating, and Ship Interior Systems. And they are covering more than half the cost of the fireworks show this year. So I thought that was really, really great. Wanted to let you know that we have, Parker and I worked on a maintenance assistance grant from the Oregon State Marine Board. This is a grant that's awarded in 2-year increments, so they give you a little bit of money for 2 years straight, and it's for maintenance of boat launch facilities that are provided to the public at no cost. And so for us, that's our boat launch and our guest dock in the marina. And so we've applied for $7,000 each year over the course of 2 years. We have one of the requirements for those grants is that the applicant entity to registered with Oregon Buys. I thought we already were, but we're not, so we're starting that registration process, which is perfect timing because we actually need Oregon Buys also to enable the port to issue RFPs through their system to all of the vendors that are registered with the state. So it's a really great free marketing way to get better bids on your public projects. And you also have access to, like I said, the state's vendor list, and you can also buy with state pricing. Everything from vehicles to groceries are on the list as suppliers. And so this is something that we're going to be completing. It does require an IGA with the state Department of Administrative Services. It's a simple IGA. It doesn't require every commissioner's signature. Jeremiah can sign it after Tommy's review. And it's $500 a year. So you'll see that as a new fee on the budget, but it's well worth the money. For the ACL dock project, we have submitted a wetland riparian area permit as part of that process to the city. That went in today. And now we have also, by the end of June, we're supposed to hear back whether or not we were awarded the emergency management and resiliency hubs grants. We got an email this week that said they had 700 applications, way more than they thought they were gonna get. They did a really good job on their inviting applications, and entities like us submitted more than one. The email said that the volunteer team are currently going through the top 100 of applications of those 700. So clearly they had kind of a staff level review, have eliminated 600 applications and are going into final review for the top 100. We didn't receive a rejection letter. I'm assuming that means both of our asks are in the top 100. Don't know if that's true. Maybe the rejection letter will show up tomorrow, but I see it as a positive sign. We'll get that funding. And then we're working now on preparing the final closeout report for the ARPA funding. That project is complete, and the Business Oregon grant for our strategic business plan will be getting $50,000 reimbursement for the cost of that project. That can be complete. And then we have quarterly reports for the recreational trails program grant, which is funding the Ptarmigan Trails work, and the local government grant program, which purchased bathroom at the end of the Harvey Road, Lee Road area there. That's all that I have.
Perfect.
A quick update, I was able to attend the Oregon City County Management Association Summer Conference in Hood River. It was really close, and I was encouraged by Kevin Greenwood, Executive Director of Reports of Hood River, to check that out. It didn't jump out as one that I would immediately attend, but as I started looking through the actual topics to be covered, it was pretty impressive the amount of overlap that I have with a county city administrator or a county manager. And so was able to attend some interesting leadership training. Also wound up getting paired with Jordan at one point in time, and we did some role playing, and just for fun, we made it about a real topic. So I actually think we had a really good conversation. It was we had an observer who watched us and then gave us notes afterwards, and I was like, this was good. And it felt like therapy, but it was good. So was able to go down and make some connections up there. I haven't had a whole lot of opportunities to connect with Abigail, the city administrator in the Port of Hood River, but did at this conference, and then again on the Sturm Miller. And she's awesome, amazing, a wealth of information, made herself available to me, and so it was a good conference. Kevin has discussed some of the conferences that are available to us as port managers, and that they are pretty few and far between, especially the ones that hit us local inland ports. I know some of you have had the opportunity to attend PNWA, and we end up seeing through a lot of ocean dredging and things that just don't apply to us. So this was really good. Did a photo video project meeting with Rod Parameter. Parmenter.
Yeah, and Richard Hallman.
He's done some photography work for the Port of Hood River. We're looking to him as we go start putting together a marketing plan. I specifically want to have something that I can take on the road with me, that I can show the properties that we have, where they're available, how big they are, the current tenants that we have, tenants leave, the buildings that are available to have, to be able to leave these packs with folks, including the strategic business plan, right? And we put a lot of effort into sort of creating this new image for Cascade Locks and for this port specifically. So getting that out there and amongst our stakeholders, and then also potential developers and investors in the Portland area or in the surrounding area. So putting together a package for me to have to take out with that. We're just starting to scratch the surface on that, but it's something that kind of wrap my head around, and I know that this commission will want to talk a little bit about a marketing plan on a bigger spectrum, but this really is just collateral material for me that we're working on right now. In the city council meeting, they still haven't appointed Tamara Farrell's new position. It sounds like that's going to go on a little bit longer. Had some good conversations around the charter, but they didn't accept the recommendation from the charter committee yet. Sounds like that's going to go around a few more times. We'll keep you updated on those. Sat in on the POCL DAC application review, was a thorn in the side during that meeting. Had a good conversation with Kevin Waters and Carly Francis. Her title escapes me at the moment, but she's like the Ryan Winsheimer of ODOT, but for WASDOT, and some of our relationships have kind of fallen off with WASDOT, and so this was an opportunity to meet with them, introduce them to the new team here at the port, and also for Kevin to talk a little bit about his vision for potentially funding opportunities for the port or for the bridge in the future. And so we worked through some of those, traded some phone numbers, made sure we knew who to contact in emergency from WASDOT, who they could contact to us about VMS signs, just a lot of good conversation around developing a relationship that's a little bit stronger with WASDOT. I feel pretty good about ODOT, but WASDOT, we had some ground to make up, and they let us know that. So was able to do a couple social events, Dominion County Chamber of Commerce, a happy hour, ran into a new business over there in Stevenson that has a photo booth that he does for weddings. So that was a quick connect, right? I think he's already booking weddings there. Ran into a couple of other businesses over there, a gentleman who's interested in doing motorcycle tours and has done it previously. Wasn't familiar with the Port of Cascade Locks, and so he has an idea of wanting to do motorcycle tours that go off track a little bit. So I said, yeah, come talk to us. How can we help? Also talked to a little bit the owners who were sponsoring this event that day. It's the Skamania Lodge events piece of it, so up there they have the axe throwing and they have the zip line, and now they do bike rentals. That's separate from Skamania Lodge, they just rent some space there, and so I made sure that they knew that we've got a really cool bike trail out here, we've got a campground that's coming. People talked about zip lines before, we really sort of see that as the vision out there, they were excited about it. So, just told them to keep an eye on what we were doing out there from a recreational standpoint, because it seemed like that'd be a cool business to have out there. A lot of 4th of July work this week, a lot of bridge conversations. I had a bridge conversation with, Mayor Kiefler from White Salmon and, Mike Shannon from the, is he the bridge committee? Is he bi-state or? Yeah, so on bi-state, about potentially using the stern wheeler as a ferry to get people back and forth from, in case that bridge wasn't coming back. But luckily, it's back. It is gonna be down for 14 days overnight from the 14th to the 26th, I believe. It's 7 PM to 7 AM, so it'll be overnight closures. It's not gonna, it just hit their Facebook, so. It shouldn't affect us too much. Parker will have a little bit of traffic to contend with, but it won't be bad. Nothing like what we could have potentially seen. Yeah, that rounds me up. Oh, yeah, we got our new office hours this week. 7 AM comes early. We all were so friendly. How are you? How are you? What did you do? And now we all just walk in like, hey.
It's been 2 days.
But there's a little bit of like acclimation there, there's a little bit of acclimation in there.
Just helping the port hearing machine a lot more.
We have seen people coming in right at 7:30, and we have seen people coming in around 5:30, so like, that's great, like, that's what we wanted to do. We also are now open during the lunch hour, so people can access us on their lunch before work or after work, so we feel good about that.
Excellent, yeah. Is there a financial big?
Just have some information, yeah, okay, so Matt sending me his communications through the week, communicated with the auditor, audited status meeting, FDO best practice surveys, 10% of our general liability insurance, that was probably Melissa there, gets us that every year. Worked on closing the 23-24 budget and worked up on cleaning up grants, so kind of standard end of the year stuff, but she always gets us that 10% off our general liability. We appreciate that.
The governing body questionnaire from Matt, it has the date of 2022. Not from it,
Where we say again,
the governing body questionnaire that Matt Atkins sent through.
that is, you are,
About a month ago.
yes, you are answering those questions for that period of time because it is to around that audit.
Oh, so
Got nothing. And unless in 2022 you were aware of something as a citizen, then yeah.
okay. That's easy, done.
Yeah, commissioner comments. Sure.
I don't really have much. I've been on a commission for a little while. I did, though, however, volunteer for the vortex race. That was hosted over at Bob Beach. And finished up in Drano. I didn't stay, but it was very successful. There were over 60 racers and it was lots of fun. And I'll just stop there and say thank you for what you do.
I also don't have much either. It was pretty busy month in town, just tourism. Starting to see the traffic pick up. And obviously the Hood River Bridge, situation where they closed down. You guys had to take up a lot of work this weekend, so thank you everyone who was involved with, keeping that flow going. It seems like they got under order now. And then just, yeah, looking forward to, the 4th of July event in the Port of Cascade Locks this week. Looks like there's gonna be at least 10 different food vendors there, so it'd be pretty cool. We make a little post about who's gonna be participating.
I don't know if it's 10 food vendors, I think it's closer to 4 or 5, but there's 12 total vendors, but some of them are selling food, but yeah.
Yeah,
More than you've ever had.
quite a few, so it seems like it's gonna have a lot of services and amenities, so looking forward to it, so.
You're awesome.
That's all I got for right now.
Unlike them, I talk a lot, so I got a lot to say. First, I want to open with, thanks again for the grant program, the grant funding program. I think it's so great that we're stepping in as those folks that really are, walking the walk and talking the talk with making sure that, we're helping the community and living up to our mission of business growth. Yes, July 4th. I think everybody knows by now is going to be incredibly hot this weekend. Is there anything that we have, or are there any plans for
Cooling center.
for cooling?
There's no plans for a cooling center. I reached out to the chief. So the chief's aware that we just don't have any facilities right now. This time of year, it's right after this, there's a wedding, right after this. There's a thing. So the pavilion this year is not available.
Okay, is there anything that you need from us as commissioners for the event?
So no, there's not. It's gonna be fairly loose. If you guys are available, if I have different commissioners that are available, I'm not sure who was coming, how long you're staying, and right, and then so families, but if you guys are available and there's opportunities to hop on the microphone and thank people for coming and thank our sponsors, we'll do that a few times throughout. If I can find one of you, great. Thanks for coming. We're happy to have everybody here. Happy 4th of July. Here's this list of sponsors, but no one's specific responsibility. You don't have to be someplace at a certain time or whatever. But if you want to step in and MC at any point in time, we'd love to have you, each and every one of you.
I'm gonna continue on the weekend stuff. Just a note, I'm sure everyone's highly aware of this, but the museum is putting on a pony party on Saturday, which is also gonna be the hottest day of this, like.
We're getting water stuff set up.
Good.
It's white, right? It's white.
And it's
So the pony party will be 10-3, supporting the museum, and then Buddy's Arcade will be hosting a fundraiser for whoever adopt a dog later on in the day. There will be misters and air conditioning and water balloons there. So we'll try to do what we can for that.
How many puppies is that? It's adopted one?
They're the only dog shelter in the county, and they were at risk of closing after the January storm. They had a whole bunch of trees that fell on their shelter, and they didn't have the funds to build them all back up. So me as a citizen we're doing as much as we can to help them out. That's where we got our dog, and it was pretty good for us, so we want to make sure it's good for other people. Going back to the marina. I want to thank everyone involved with that life jacket loaner program. I got to see Jeremiah on TV today, with KGW, I believe.
Yeah. Thanks, Genevieve.
Thank you. And it really made me start just thinking about how something just like that really, like something like seemingly like small, just having some life jackets there really starts putting our community in a positive light amongst people that are watching that. They're like, oh, they care about these citizens. They're free life jackets for people that need them. So I appreciate everyone that's involved with that labor program. It's awesome. Any updates on signage for the bridge?
No, we still need to work up a request proposal in the midst of the Ixtapa sewer lift station update. It kind of got lost in the mix.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Any updates on the bathrooms? You mentioned them, the drive-through bathrooms.
We expect delivery in October.
Okay.
And we have paid for the bathrooms, we have received our 80% match award back.
Right.
And we received 50% of the $19,000 grant that we received from Gorge Mount Hood. The RDMO, they will pay the other 50% upon project completion. Darren Ekman. What's his name, sorry?
Engineering, what is it?
ATS.
ATS.
Is going to be working on the permitting process for any utility work that we need to do. But we have received the state stamp of approval on the unit itself, and now we can go on to our county approvals that we need. They're just going to be helping us with that.
Cool. Thank you.
So delivery early October for that one.
Okay. I know we all got an email, but I went before we started here, I drove down by the business park and. It's bad, like, I just drove and I wanted to drive faster to get out of there, it was atrocious. I know it's not necessarily our issue, but anything we can do to help them, because it sounded like they potentially have Condé Nast coming out tomorrow for their own. For their own promotion, which is a big deal, not only for them, but for our entire town, our community. So anything we can do to help them. I know it's very short notice, we don't have until tomorrow, but I really hope either they postpone or we push on the city to get that fixed, because that was the first.
So I went and didn't smell anything.
I literally went right before coming here tonight.
Are you smelling tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I have the windows closed, so I didn't drink.
I drove down by
Gotcha.
it, and yeah, it was.
Can you smell it from Forest Lane?
No, but once you get closer to the facilities, it is pretty bad, pretty bad. And I really didn't want to end on that bummer of the comment. I know, there was something. I think the last thing I mentioned it last time, but probably too busy right now, but the marina. Any sort of updates on charging and costs for the marina?
Yeah, so. So this is the last time, so I did this once before, it was 2022 when I did it. So those are the costs that I have from Port of Hood River, which is the closest marina. They have considerably more amenities than we do. Right now we charge, so you can pay by the day if you're just coming to use the dock for a day and we happen to have one available. You can pay monthly or you can pay yearly, most folks pay yearly. So it's $1,000 a year to have a boat down there. And that's if you're under 30 feet. At the Port of Hood River, it falls between, and this was 2 years ago, so I don't know how much they were. They were $1,537 to $1,606 per year, somewhere in that range. They didn't offer to rent by the month, they only had by the year. And then for vessels over 30 feet, we were charging $36 a foot. Port of Hood River was charging $40 a foot and plus a flat 432. So if we had passed this at that time, what we were talking about, what I want this commission to eventually do is to review every fee at one meeting a year and decide whether or not we implement that 3% increase or whatever increase it is. Right, so to provide you basically this spreadsheet that says, here's what it is now, here's what it'll be in 24, 25, 26, 27, it's gonna continue to go up as the cost of living goes up. And then for there to be years where you go, hey, we're not gonna do it this year, right? The plan should be that every year it goes up, and that there are years that you guys go, no, we're not gonna do it this year. Versus bringing things to you guys and go, hey, did we raise the price again? Because that's tough.
And we should probably do that halfway through the year then, because we would have budgeting cycles that we would need to prepare for. And if it is going to be rentals either month or at campgrounds, then we would want to have those increase before the middle of the season.
Great. And so, I mean, we have tolls, campground, marina, special events, film permits, public boat launch, key deposit, projector, vendor permits, the pavilion, the different ways the pavilion splits out. So those are all things that I'd like to do at a single meeting, but
Do people live on their boats in our marina?
maybe not.
Okay.
Not allowed to live on your boat.
It's making
3
sure.
days.
I was like, dude, that would be just so cheap.
That'd be a good deal.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
3 days is the most you can stay on the boat.
Bases, mortgage fees, it helps cover doing milfoil along the beach, you know, when we do our Labor Day swim.
Yeah.
So sure.
We have heard back from some tenants at the marina, they used to be able to go to the visitor center to use the bathroom there when it was a visitor center. It's not a visitor center anymore, it's half a restaurant, half a marina. So we put a porta potty down there that's available. Some of them haven't loved that. We figure that around, we're aware of it. I don't know that I have a solution at this point, but there's a restroom there for their use.
What is 104 on Saturday? Anyone who want to go do it?
$1,000 a year.
So I guess in that respect, we are doing what we can to help with the problem. Well, you're talking about down there, because we don't have the pump station working, so we're, you know, see, we're not contributing much.
One way to look at it.
Yes, you know, yes. Okay.
All right, well, Albert stole quite a bit of the thunder I was gonna talk about. As a member of the museum board, I did want to bring up the pony party, but he already described that. So I will say that we are trying to get the bounce house changed out for a water slide with a vendor. It's currently on hold, but hasn't been paid for, so we're crossing our fingers that I mean, from another, like, we can't access it because somebody else has already put it on hold. So we're hoping that holds through for them and we get it.
Attach a sprinkler to the top of the downhouse.
I mean,
Wet belt, no.
I think, Brenda Stiffen has a flip and slide she's bringing, and I was gonna bring my hose and an old school sprinkler, because that's what I did as like an 80s kid. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to stay cool. Thankfully, I keep seeing the forecast go down and down a little bit. It was like 98 to 100 and now it's like 94, so I'm like,
I saw 104 on Saturday.
yeah, it's gone back to 94 last time I checked.
Oh, shoot. I hope it keeps going that way.
I know, right? And then on my other subcommittee, the Bridge of the God Centennial, we had our first meeting a couple weeks ago. I think it was pretty successful. We assigned out a lot of action items and tasks to go do. I did get a response back from WAM finally, and they said I could go ahead and set up a phone call with them, and I'm seeing if I can get on one of their agendas for like the board meeting coming up. So hopefully we'll make some traction there. Reiterating another thing Albert said, the Herman Creek smells. I had a conversation with Jasper. He called me directly, so I called him back to talk about it. And I've experienced the smells down at that business park, and it is completely atrocious. And that was a year ago almost that I went down and smelled it. And if it hasn't been resolved, it's absolutely unacceptable. And we are going to see impacts to our economic development strategic business plan if it's not resolved. So I see that they're demanding to have a phone call. The tenants want a phone call with the city and the contractor and us in attendance, or at least executive director in attendance. And I think we need to support that in any way we can and push for the city to support it. Because I haven't seen the city response to that request yet. So just wanted to outline that I back our tenants 100% on this.
That's a good point, because that impacts us.
It does.
At the end of the day.
We don't want to be dubbed the urban crap.
Right. Exactly, we really need to support our tenants on this. Like, I know we were kind of hands off saying it's not there's nothing we can do, but at this point, I think we need to put some pressure on the city to really make sure it's corrected, because it is going to start affecting our economics. So. Next is, I am excited for the Flex 6 proposals to start rolling in. I just wanted to mention that in the public forum. Always gotta mention Flex 6. And then I have this really kind of random idea for house number 3 I wanted to bring up. It currently has a commercial kitchen in it, and it has space available for like dinners and stuff like that. I think we could better utilize that by maybe investing a little bit into a commercial kitchen upgrade and then marketing it as such, because I talked to some restaurant owners in Portland when I was there, and they really, when they found out I lived in the gorge, they're like, I really want to host a farm to table event in the gorge. And I was like, well, we might have the perfect location for you to be able to do something like that, except the kitchen kind of sucks. So if we were to put like a commercial stove in it and like a better refrigerator and stuff like that, a little bit better
It has
space.
expansion, Tom Owen had done some drawings, to, extend the pavilion and do, some upgrades to the pavilion to make it just exactly that. to be a better
The
bit.
pavilion could work, but also house 3 has a lot of kitsch to it as well. And it has, I mean, it already has a commercial kitchen designation, so upgrading it would be a pretty easy putt for small like farm to table events and pop-ups and stuff like that. So it's just an economic idea to try to bring in business during off seasons as well.
Sure.
Or weekdays when we probably don't have weddings occupying it and stuff like that. So I would be happy to start like looking at drawing up my own proposal of like what it might cost to do that, at least like buying additional equipment and stuff. Something to look into anyway.
Absolutely.
I mean, if that's something that generally council is interested in exploring, I'd be glad to see what it would take to put some numbers around having a commercial kitchen put into house 3.
And it wouldn't take too much just trading out some of the appliances, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's do that. I get anything.
I'm not opposed to extending the, like, basically the use case and the life of that beyond the wedding, because it's rented out for weddings like all the time, right?
That's what it's used for most often. Sometimes it gets used for parties, things like that.
Right.
Very infrequently a meeting space. Typically, this is where brides get ready before the meeting, right away.
Well, and the caterers use it as well, and it might be beneficial to have better equipment there for them, for the weddings and stuff.
Yeah, it's absolutely, if there's a general consensus for the commission that you guys would like some numbers back on what that would look like, I'd be glad to go do it.
Yeah.
Or you can even buy used restaurant equipment from restaurants that close down and stuff, like it doesn't have to be brand new. It's something better, like better than the little, I went in there and explored it, just for my own general purposes and, yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I would want to know what the viability is. It's like, sure, we could say like they would have pop-ups and stuff like that, but like, what would that take from Janetta's standpoint to book them, to market them and all of those? And like, how long would we reasonably think that it would take to make it viable? Like viability in addition to cost is a real thing.
Right, for sure, return on investment.
Surely.
And is that, just looking for consensus, right? I mean, if that's something that we want me to go out and start working on, is find out the viability of a commercial kitchen in house 3 and what a business plan would look like for that, I'm glad to do it. But I just want to make that sure that that's something you guys want us to work into our workload.
I don't know. We've actually had a
No.
Here to look up a little.
For sure. I want to make sure that this is something you guys want me to go do as a board.
What do you think? And maybe bring it up to Janetta and get her.
She has 10 weddings this month. I actually any time.
And
Well, I don't
it
think it's
doesn't
gonna
need to
happen tomorrow.
be- Yeah, it certainly doesn't need to be a priority, I'm just, you know.
That's a great idea.
Development idea for utilizing some of our assets a little bit better.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea.
Worth exploring. Sounds like, yeah, all right, perfect. Done deal.
If you see something that's a red flag or something, I mean,
Off the top of my head, I don't see anything to red flag. I know it's been discussed by previous commissions. I think we actually even looked into pricing at one time, so that's all stuff that's doable.
We did used to use that as a commercial kitchen and people did buy it. There was a business in there that was a salt per acre and different things over the years.
Exactly, that's
And
everything.
also back some years ago, there's a plaque on the building to the lady, I can't remember her name, but she used to cook meals there twice a week for lunch, remember?
Yeah.
And you could go and for like $3 or $3.50, you got a beautiful meal, and her fried chicken and mashed potatoes, and people would go there and have their lunch on these days and stuff, and then there was also seniors coming in for free.
Yeah.
I think it would be, it is a serious gap in the community, like having commercial prep space for the restaurants. I know Caroline Lips approached me saying if we had any ability to find space, because they need to expand for their just prep kitchen abilities. I'm like, well, I don't know that House 3 would fulfill that, but to Melissa's point, there's a lot of independent people out there that would want to use a kitchen for a day to prepare their products and be able to sell it at farmers markets and stuff like that. Yeah, you're not allowed to do it in your house.
Right.
So we could rent it out for purposes like that too, not just for pop-ups and farm to table dinners and stuff like that.
Sure.
So.
Might be worth at some point talking about the Cascadian. Anyway,
I think that's all I
okay,
have.
well, once again, I'm glad I went last because you all did. I got a great bunch of talking heads here, don't we? You know, it's nice not to be a one-man show. But yeah, pony party, is gonna be great. Thank you to everybody. I sat in on a meeting, yesterday, preparing for the 4th, and, that was great to see how well prepared everybody is and, getting that. It's gonna be quite the event with the band and, Deb says, we have bands years, many years. I go, really? Remember, but anyway, it's gonna be great. And wow, a dozen vendors down there, that's gonna be something. So, hopefully everybody will stay cool and, hopefully they won't be jumping in the locks, to cool off. That's not acceptable.
Yeah.
But, no, just thanks to all the staff and, everybody for doing such a great job and, for all the input. I'm really looking forward to what we're doing, both with the, grant programs here in town as well as, some things we got cooking on some downtown revitalization things, which we'll talk about at a later date. But yeah, things are moving and looking forward to see some now with the new fiscal year and our strategic business plan being finished, the things that we're going to start accomplishing and be able to say, we did that. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have. And if there's nothing further to come before the commission, then I will adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.